Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to use this opportunity to welcome you to Child's Month 2025 webinar. We are partnering with the Southeast Regional Health Authority, the University of the West Indies Western Campus, and that's the Department of Psychology, Sociology, and Social Work, and the Ministry of Health and Wellness. My name is Lisa Beth Crossman, Regional Psychiatrist for Southeast Regional Health Authority. And my job here today is to welcome our moderator who will guide us through the evening's proceedings. Our
Recording in
moderator for this
progress.
evening, which is day one, is Miss Georgia Rose, and Miss Georgia Rose Van Riel is actively involved in mental health education and early childhood development. She holds a master's degree in clinical psychology and a Master of Arts degree in infant and early childhood development. She's currently completing her Doctor of Philosophy in infant and early childhood development. She's an actively engaging clinician, very interactive, and she has been with the Western region for over 20 years at the Western Regional Health Authority. And she's also very actively involved in the University of the West Indies at the undergraduate level. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now welcome Miss Georgia Rose, who will guide us through the evening's proceedings. Miss Rose Van Riel.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Crossman, thank you for that lovely introduction. I want to welcome everyone near and far for this insightful webinar that seeks to focus on understanding behavioral challenges in neurodivergent children who are a part of our lives. We want to use this as an opportunity to provide our caregivers, our parents, our stakeholders, and our children and adolescents with an opportunity to gain and increase understanding of how they may better support the children who come to us for care and guidance. This evening, we are privileged to have an esteemed panel with us. Our panelists are made up of psychologists, educators, youth and parent representatives, and they will be sharing with us their expertise and lived experiences in navigating the issues that we have come to appreciate may be plaguing our children who live with neurodivergent issues. They will discuss various topics that seek to explore, dissect, and provide meaningful and practical strategies that we can walk away with this evening to help us provide meaningful intervention to our children and the families that we support. So whether you are a parent, a caregiver, or an educator, or a specialist, we hope this webinar will provide valuable insight and tools to help you better understand and support children who are facing behavioral challenges. Do not miss this opportunity to learn from our experts. We welcome you to share your questions, your thoughts, and your concerns in our chat features. We welcome you to engage our panelists as much as possible, and we look forward to a wonderful evening. Before we move forward, we want to welcome Nurse Janine Foster-Waite, Senior Mental Health Officer within the Western Regional Health Authority, to guide us with a word of prayer as we go into this evening's proceedings. Nurse Foster-Waite.
Thank you very much, Georgia. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this another day. We thank you for this another opportunity that you have blessed us with, where we can um, share information that will help those who have children, those who care for children, those who will someday care for children, and just the wide population in general, and giving them the necessary things, that tools that they need to be able to deal with the children that they face each day. Father, you know that sometimes children are misunderstood. You know, the various behavioral challenges can be overwhelming for the caregivers. And we pray that tonight's proceedings will be one that will leave them with the toolkit that they need to take on the task ahead. Father, we pray that you'll guide the proceedings. We pray that the presentations will be very insightful and engaging. We pray that the the internet and all the social media aspects will hold still, and we will be able to transmit to other persons out there who are joining us via YouTube or um, other sites. And we pray that you'll just be with us all. God, and protect us for those who have not yet joined and are going to be joining. I pray that you'll just send them that reminder, Father, prompt them to come on and get the information that they need, and that when we will have completed today's proceedings, persons will be blessed, persons will be filled with the knowledge that they need, and they'll be able to share it because they would have learned it in a way that is going to help them to help others as well. Be with us as we pray. In your name, amen.
Thank you so much for that prayer, Nurse Foster Wade. At this time, we would like to welcome Dr. Judith Leiber, or Director of Child and Adolescent Mental Health and Wellness, to bring greetings on behalf of the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Dr. Judith Leiber? I am not hearing Dr. Leiber, so I don't want us to delay too much. I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to our esteemed panelists. I'm going to be giving you a brief introduction. We have some very lovely individuals who have taken time out of their afternoons to be with us this evening. And I want to take the opportunity to remind us of the National Child's Month theme, and it's Treat the Youth's Right. And when we think about this theme, it envisions or encompasses a lot of things. When we think about treating our children well, treating them right, when we think about advocating for the well-being of our children, we need to have an understanding and appreciation of what are the issues that might be affecting them, and who better to help us navigate this massive minefield of this period of child and adolescence. You know, when I was preparing for this evening, I thought so much about the concept of neurodivergence. And I want to tickle our brains a little bit as we go through the evening to think about, is it really divergence? You know, is it a bad thing to be different? What does neurodivergence really speak to? What does it actually mean? When we say that our children are different by what standard, whose standard? So this evening, we hope to have a very invigorating conversation, a very honest and open conversation, a frank discussion about what it means to live as a child or an adolescent in this time, in this generation, in this age. And we want to find out not only what the challenges might be that they are faced with, but how can we support and empower and educate those who do have the privilege to work with children and adolescents. So with us this evening, we have the lovely Mrs. Ken Parks. She is a manager at the Office of Children's Advocate within the legal department. Also permit me to welcome Mrs. Simone Smith Parkin. Mrs. Smith Parkin is a senior guidance counselor within the Ministry of Education's Skills, Youth and Information. We also have the esteemed presence of Mrs. Jennifer Jarrett. Miss Jarrett is the guidance counselor, or one of the guidance counselors, at the esteemed Calabar High School. We also have the lovely presence of Mrs. Shafay Hutchinson. Mrs. Hutchinson is a parent of a child living with neurodivergent challenges, and she will be sharing her own lived experience. We also have a representative from the Junior Mayor's Office of the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation, the student council individual. I am told that we should have had Mr. Tyrone Smith, but in Mr. Smith's place, we have a lovely individual, a Mr. Justin Francis, also from the Calabar High School. And I'm told that Justin is in the ripe age of adolescence. He's 15 years old, and he is also going to be sharing with us this evening. So without much further ado, because we want to squeeze out every drop of information that we can get this evening, I want to welcome Mrs. Kayan Parks, manager of the Office of the Children's Advocate, to lead us off this evening. And she will be sharing with us, Why is My Child Not in School? Addressing the rights of children to education. Mrs. Parks?
Hello, good evening, and thank you for that warm welcome. So, as was stated, I am actually the legal policy manager at the Office of the Children's Advocate, and ultimately, what I do is I advocate on behalf of children right around the island, which includes children who are in conflict with the law, which at times may include children who have what you may call behavioral issues or mental issues. Um, I also have administrative responsibilities, and I also have the responsibility, as I do today, which is to share the message from the Office of the Children's Advocate, primarily through from Mrs. Dan Gordon Harrison, which is the Children's Advocate for Jamaica, and and we're really going to try and break down the issue of mental health in schools. So I have a presentation that I want to share with you, and I hope you're seeing the screen. So are we seeing the screen?
Yes, we are, Mrs. Parks.
Okay, great.
Yes, we are.
So I decided that with my little time, I was going to focus on mental health in schools. And the best place to start from the point of a legal perspective, of course, is the law. And it would be remiss of me not to start with the UNCRC, which is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. And we, Jamaica, ratified to this convention in 1990. And it was really a watershed moment because it really highlighted the rights of children, which also include children with behavioral issues or children who maybe have mental challenges. Um, and so the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, one of the key things and the key takeaway from this convention is that it was signed by 196 countries, ratified by 196 countries. And this is significant because what it means is that this is one of the most endorsed, if I could use that word, convention by world leaders. And so it is a coming together for us to define what are the rights of a child. And there are four main principles that came out of it: the right to survival, participation, non-discrimination, and for our purposes today, development is a significant aspect of it. And because of that, of the signing of that convention, we had to adopt those principles into our local legislation. And of course, our Jamaican Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms is one such most important document, which guarantees the right to education for children. In addition to our constitution, we have other pieces of legislation that touch and concern children and their right to an education, even in the face of certain disabilities. So we have the Disabilities Act, and in particular, Section 26(1), which says schools must not deny admission based on disability. The school must also provide reasonable accommodation for children. And when we're talking about disability in relation to this piece of legislation, it includes people who are a person who is suffering from physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment, which may hinder his or her full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with other persons. We also have the Child Care and Protection Act. And the Child Care and Protection Act is one of our premier pieces of legislation. It is that piece of legislation which created the Office of the Children's Advocate. It created things like the Office of the Children's Registry, and it's defined the approach that must be taken when dealing with children. And so it becomes very significant, and it's significant for us to start our discussion with this understanding that any decision made concerning our Jamaican children or children within Jamaica, because I don't have to just be Jamaican, must be made in the best interest of that child. And just to give you some perspective, what we mean by best interest, we're talking about their emotional and psychological well-being. We're talking about their right to family connections, their right to be in their family environment, their right to be safe, their right to be nurtured, their right to be educated, and for all purposes here, acting with urgency and care when there is mental health decisions that need to be made in relation to our children. So when we speak about what is in the best interest of children, of a child, we're looking about all the factors that touch and concern that child. So their household, their family relations, their right to an education, their right to spiritual nourishment. We're talking about everything that touches and concerns a child. Now, what does the Education Act have to say, in particular with children that may have difficulties? And it says, Section 24.1 allows the Minister of Education to instruct the Educational Board to identify children needing special educational treatment. And there are policies that are in place as to how they treat with children that may have special needs. And we're talking children who may have be on the spectrum, they may have ADHD, may be hyperactive, whether the government is going to assist with giving them a shadow while they're at school. But the takeaway is that our government, by virtue of our legislation, by virtue of us endorsing the UNCRC and the paramountcy principle, that is that any action taken must be in relation to the best interest of children, is that whether a child is brilliant and catches things very quickly and has no challenges, or whether a child has challenges, whether it is due to a mental impairment, whether it is due to trauma, then there needs to be an assessment of that child, and the educational support ought to be put in place. You notice I said ought to be put in place to assist that child, and also to assist the family and parents where possible. All right, so how does that help? Confirms that the special educational needs, including those linked to mental health conditions, example, ADHD, anxiety, trauma, fall under the ministry's responsibility, and it encourages early identification and tailored educational responses. And this really requires a multi-stakeholder approach, because in order for early identification to take place as to, okay, there's a need here, we're going to need our psychologists, sometimes we're going to need our psychiatrists, we're going to need trained teachers who are specialized in identifying that a child is in need of help and is not just a bad pickney or a disruptive child, right? So the legal framework is also captured in our Mental Health Act. Unfortunately, I think this was a missed opportunity, because the Mental Health Act really doesn't go into childcare. The Act does not specifically address schools, but it emphasizes the state's duty to protect mentally ill persons. And the Mental Health Act, I know it is being reviewed, and I'm not sure how far it will go, but I am hopeful. So the Act is currently under review to include human rights-based principles, which is now absent. So if you really go through the Mental Health Act, you realize that it is there to protect someone who may have an estate and their management, their psychiatric care, but it doesn't really reinforce the rights in a very direct way. And it is yet to be seen if a special provisions will be included for children. with Jamaica ratifying to the United Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which is another convention that we also ratified to, there's a call for explicit inclusion of children's mental health in education policy and practice. And I know this is ongoing. This is something we're still talking about, and action is being taken. What I will say, and this brings me to that we do have schools in every parish. There is a school that is designated to deal with children with special schools to deal with children with special needs. However, there is a capacity issue. So the mainstream school support 3,400 students with special needs. That's emotional and behavioral supported in regular schools. So services include resource rooms and teacher aides. One moment. So are there enough specialized schools? So I know that my statistics might have been misleading a moment ago, but the short answer is no, we don't have enough specialized schools. So by 2018 and 2019, only about 10,063 children were officially documented with disabilities, and only 6 inclusive schools existed to support approximately 4,746 children with intellectual learning and disabilities. And this might have changed, but the point made is that we don't have enough specialized schools to treat with all the issues. What that means, my takeaway is that it means that regular schools perhaps need to be fitted to deal with children with special needs. So are there enough specialized schools? There's overcapacity. Nearly all special schools are now currently filled. Principals report long wait lists and rising referrals. The infrastructure gaps exist. Many schools lack disability friendly facilities, example, ramps and so on for wheelchairs. Some parishes only recently got private special schools. There's a mismatch between the need and support. This could be seen in the previous diagram where over 53% of children who are in need of assistance due to mental illness that contribute to learning disabilities are left without support academically. And there's, of course, burden on our teachers and on our administration. So the demand far exceeds the supply, and children needing intervention are often left unsupported. It's my experience many times where I may encounter a child in the courtroom. The child is deemed to be uncontrollable. So that's a terminology we use in the court where we say the child is uncontrollable. The parents can't control the child is running away from home, not attending school. When they attend school, they're highly disruptive. And the parent brings the application before the court. And they said, I can't do this anymore. I don't know what's wrong with this child. I talk to the child. The guidance counselor doesn't know. And then when we intervene, many a times, and we often have to use the help of psychologists and psychiatrists, we find out that there is something else operating on those children that explains the behavior. And that explanation is so important because now that we are able to identify the issues, then we can treat it. So many a times we're not trained. Many of us don't have an eye, and we're trained to identify that maybe this child needs an assessment. And so there needs to be a sensitization that takes place at the grassroots, in the homes, in the communities, so we can start to identify that behavioral problems may stem from something deeper. So there needs to be improved and increased teacher training for behavioral and mental issues. So especially where a child is overactive and they say to the parent, the child, they can't control the child is disrupting the class. There are techniques that teachers can employ in assisting a child to settle down. But if they don't recognize that there is something else operating on the child, and it won't be addressed. I have encountered many children right around the island who they've gone right through the educational system and they cannot read. They never learned to read. They just never settled down. And when again you get them assessed, things like ADHD, trauma-related responses has prevented the child from settling down and grasping concepts. And they may look normal and you just said they're rude, but it's so much more. So the prevalence of childhood mental illness in Jamaica and in the Caribbean, and this is in accordance to a report done by UNICEF, is that in Jamaica, 16.4% of adolescents between 10 to 19, ages 10 to 19, had a mental disorder. And a local study done in 2010 said 20% of children between 4 to 15 were screened positive for ADHD. And this is linked to family conflict, exposure to violence, so early childhood trauma, depression rates. 7.4% of Jamaican teens diagnosed with major depression for comparison to 14% in Trinidad. Now, the disparity in the figures may be that we're not doing enough testing, but more and more, we're more alive to the needs of our children and to the mental wellness of our children. It is something that we're exploring more. Regional insights, 20 to 25% of Caribbean adolescents show some mental health symptom. Anxiety is especially common, often higher in girls, and overlaps with depression. So there seems to be a lack of support when it comes to children with ADHD and similar issues, often ignored or mislabeled as disruptive. And I'm telling you, if it reaches the point of court, then they're deemed uncontrollable children. And many times these uncontrollable children, it's a mental health issues, where a child is going to get up and run away from home. And how it is treated, though, when they're very disruptive in school, is that they tend to be punished. So we suspend them, we expel them, and this does not help them. It leads to greater exposure to further harm, and then it limits the village that is now watching over these children. And so what we need to do now is to arm our schools and our institutions with enough information. And we also need to think about expanding every school to also help and facilitate children going to regular schools with ADHD, maybe some hyperactive disorder, or whatever they may have. If they can go to a traditional high school and their condition be managed, then it needs to be explored, because as I said before, we don't have enough specialized schools. So it means all of our schools need to move towards a more specialized approach. So these are some suggestions. I don't know if we're going to take them on or not, but international models show success when schools adopt a full system strategy supporting all students and staff. Proven strategies include social emotional learning programs, positive behavior supports, restorative discipline methods, on-site school counseling. I mean, we do have our guidance counselors, and we have excellent guidance counselors right through the island, but they do need greater support because there are more referrals being made. Individual accommodations, example, visual aids, extra breaks for children who have certain mental challenges, clear routines, and positive reinforcement. There needs to be greater understanding and compassion as well. And global examples. So the US, the CDC recommends staff training, student connectedness, crisis plans, and mental health resources. In Trinidad and Tobago, they have piloted mindfulness and counseling in schools. In Barbados, they offer school counselors from age 7 right up. Mental health first aid training common in developed countries. We need to find a way to, like I said, we need to educate our grassroots people so there's less stigma attached. I don't know how I am for time.
Your time is up.
My time is up. Okay, so I was going to just give one example that I encountered in the field where a child had severe mental illnesses. And in the community, the viewpoint taken by the community members was that that happened to the child because of the actions of the mother during pregnancy. Um, and it was, I won't get into detail, but it was designed to shame the mother and isolate her because she has this difficult child dealing with. So we really need to educate and support um, our parents and our communities and educate them. So both teachers and parents need to be alive to spot red flags, and so we can get treatment as early as possible. And I've made several recommendations here, and I won't get into it because I don't want to cut into anybody's time.
I'm
But
going to ask you to hold the recommendations because we're going to come back to them, Mrs. Sparks.
yes,
Such a lovely, lovely, lovely job. I think you have started us off on the right toe, the big toe.
yes,
Ready. I love it. Before we go any
okay.
further, I want to pause for a moment to
Let me
welcome and
see.
formally introduce again Dr. Judith Leiber, our Director of Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services with the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Dr. Leiber, ready for us? See Dr. Leiber. Dr. Leiber, we're not hearing. As we give her a moment to catch herself, just to remind us that when we speak to neurodivergence, we're speaking to the natural and varied ways that the brain processes information, the brain learns, and the brain communicates. However, we want to be mindful that there is no single clear way that the brain must operate. And therefore, we never want to adopt a policy or a perspective that all children must be the same. It is in our differences that we come alive and life becomes more meaningful and amazing and engaging. So we want to create a space, and Mrs. Parks does a lovely job of just highlighting the legislator and the laws around all of this. But we want to create a world, starting with our beautiful little island, that creates affordances and accommodations for everyone. We don't make ourselves, we're born into this life, and we don't want to feel like an outcast or to treat any of our children like outcasts. Dr. Leiber will let us know when she jumps back on. I don't know what's taking place. But I
Miss Rose, Miss Rose.
ready, yes. So let's go, Dr. Leiber.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm a bit unfamiliar with this phone, but I will speak. I'd like to bring greetings from the Ministry of Health and Wellness on behalf of the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Subunit. I'd like to congratulate Dr. Crossman and all the others who helped her and are helping her to put on this webinar. We're very proud of the fact that Jamaica probably has, well, I don't know, Jamaica, that we have started a tradition of a child and adolescent mental health day, maybe about 7-8 years now. And it's really the fourth Thursday of May, but exigencies of life and of the service, we are looking more towards the fifth to celebrate it this year. But nevertheless, it's important for us to celebrate it, for the nation to be made aware of, our need for good mental health care for our children. We are going to be having something in Runaway Bay for a group of children at risk, where we want to give them first-hand experience, of skills that they can employ when they're in distress or stressed or emotionally dysregulated, right? So once again, kudos to Dr. Crossman, Miss Rose, and everybody else who has worked on this webinar. I'm sure it will be very informative, and I'm looking forward to all the presentations, and kudos to all our presenters as well who have joined with us in this quest. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Liber. Wonderful job. We want to take this opportunity to welcome Mrs. Simone Smith Parkin, the Senior Education Officer in the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth, and Information, representing the Guidance and Counseling Unit. Mrs. Smith Parkin.
Thank you, Mrs. Georgia Rose Van Riel. I really appreciate the fact that I was invited to participate in this webinar. So I guess I have Dr. Crossman to thank for that. I know we're running with a 7-minute presentation timeline, so I will just try to get myself going. And my almost namesake, Miss Park, you took some of my presentation, so I guess we're all on the same page, which is a good thing, right? Today I'll be talking about creating the balance, addressing neurodiversity and challenging behaviors in schools, because we acknowledge that our student population is very diverse. And as Ms. Park said, we have to ensure we can cater to this important right of our children to access education and to basically experience the most positive life outcome that they possibly can. So I don't know if you've ever watched The Good Doctor. Here is an excellent example of an individual who we can consider to be neurodiverse. If you know the storyline, he is an individual on the autism spectrum, but he had an excellent mentor. He had a good support system in his brother, who unfortunately lost his life at a very young age. But then he had a very good mentor who helped him in terms of studies and becoming a doctor, accessing a job when no one had faith in him because he was on the autism spectrum. So today I'm going to look at neurodiversity in the educational setting and the challenging behaviors that are associated and that many of our educators really do not know how to deal with. And yes, I agree with Ms. Park, we do need to do more training and capacity building with our educators. And we are in that mode right now at the Ministry of Education because we recognize the challenges that our students face. And then I'm going to explore, and she did mention some of the international strategies that have been explored so far. So I'm going to just look at those and what has been working in our system and what needs to be improved. So Ms. Rose went into defining neurodiversity or neurodivergence, but let's look at it real quickly. According to Singer 99 and Armstrong 2010, neurodiversity is a concept that neurological differences such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and others are natural variations of the human brain and not inherently pathological. And so what we're saying here, people are different. So it's natural. God didn't want anybody to be considered a disabled individual or someone who is not worth living because they are different from us. The difference is really what makes us very unique, and it makes life beautiful. You have different people, you have different capacities. And so we have to look at how we can help each other to become the best version of ourselves. So people are different, and we do have the resources, we do have the studies, we do have the professionals who know how to assist us to treat with these challenges that many of us may not know how to deal with. So some of the common conditions that we are aware of, we talk about the autism spectrum disorder. And so what this is saying is that many individuals show differences, especially in their social communication, sensory processing, and they may have repetitive behaviors, they may have a routine. And even though they may have these differences, the good thing is they have strengths as well. And this is one of the approaches we have in the Ministry of Education. We look at a strengths-based approach in how we deal with each individual. So we don't want to focus on what is wrong. We want to focus on what is good what we can make better. Of course, it's important, though, that we understand these conditions, what they mean, and therefore we're going to look at the strategies that we can explore in treating with some of these conditions. We also have ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Many people like to think that the kids who are energetic and who are impulsive and so on, they're bad and they don't have no manners. We don't want that sort of thought process as it relates to our children. So though they may be high energy and they may not sit down, they can be very creative individuals, and they may be able to think divergently, which is thinking outside of the box. If you've ever watched this movie Divergent, though it's probably not the best example right now because it's a little violent in some cases, the divergent individuals in that movie are not liked by this other group called the erudites, because with the divergence, they think differently. They think outside of the box. They're creative. And so the erudites who control the school system did not like that, because then now they would have to come up with different ways and methodologies to engage or teach and test the people who were divergent. So that's something to put on your movie list, folks, and tell me if I'm right when you have watched it. We also have dyslexia, so those are the people who have reading challenges and so on. And we have the dyspraxia, who may have developmental coordination issues. All right, so these are some common conditions, but there are others. And how do we address the behavioral challenges that some of these are considered to present? And why I say behavioral challenges, because of the difference in how the brains are working and communicating. Many people, because they do not understand what is happening with an individual who's considered to be neurodivergent or neurodiverse, is that they will now interpret their behaviors as bad or poor. And it may create challenges because they don't have the tools or the skill sets to really address those challenges. So some of the behaviors that the students may exhibit within the school system, and that may be misunderstood because some needs are not being met by the students. And so their natural reaction is to act out or to beckon to someone for that attention they need. And it's going to look like it's a behavioral issue. So the aggression or physical outbursts, the disruption in class, the wandering around, the withdrawal or the shutdowns, the non-compliance, the sensory-related responses, difficulty with transitions or changes in routine. If you've ever watched The Accountant, another movie, folks, and sometimes, some of these movies, they may not sell the theme in a particular way, but when you watch, you really understand that they are pointing to some life-changing or some life challenges that we may not even process. In The Accountant, the guy who is the accountant is on the autism spectrum. And once there was a disruption in his routine as a child, it was problematic. And his dad, who was a military man, taught him how to fight or engage in combat to really balance his, discipline and how he reacts to situation, etc. And he eventually joined the army, but his processing in terms of his cognitive skills, he was fabulous with numbers. He was good. He became an accountant / forensic auditor. And I mean, he could just read through numbers and he could tell if you were stealing, if you were managing your accounts well, etc. So therefore, these differences that our neurodiverse children or neurodivergent children have should not necessarily be seen as bad things. There's nothing wrong with being different. We now have to support or have the support systems in place to treat with the children who have these conditions. And so the behaviors that we see sometimes are really misunderstood. But how can we treat with these situations? We have to have a good understanding. And Ms. Park said it correctly. We have to assess. If you go to doctor and you're ill, you need a diagnosis for you to basically be treated properly. And so the strategies that we are looking at, and basically these strategies are supposed to help our students to experience an inclusive, compassionate, caring, and loving environment within the school system. So one of the first things we do is to assess. And within our school system, we facilitate assessment of students. We have MACAM, we have Sharpton Teachers College, Sam Sharp Teachers College, we have Michael, we have several facilities where we send our students for assessment, because sometimes managing the behaviors in the classrooms becomes very difficult for a classroom teacher. And of course, while they were at college, they did learn classroom management, but sometimes the understanding of the particular condition or neurodiverse condition is critical to be able to come up with a direct or individual support plan for the student. So we need to do the assessment. So that's strategy one. Because of time, I'm not going to delve too much into the details. And then after the assessment, you come up with a support plan. How will I support this student? How will I support this child, whether at school, whether at home, or within any particular social environment, etc. We don't want to shame families or people, just like that example Ms. Park gave. No, we want to help, because the best possible life outcome is what we're after. And individuals who are different can become the best version of themselves. Another strategy, and we utilize it in the school system right now, 50% or over 50% of our schools are participating in the school-wide positive behavior intervention and supports framework that looks at behavior modification and management within the school system. So we have about 520 schools that have been trained, parents have been trained, school educators have been trained. They look at the core values of the institution. They look at what is expected in terms of correct and appropriate behavior within various spaces, such as the classroom, the lunchroom, in the at the sport field, or they're doing PE, etc. Right? But we know more can be done. And even on our operational plan for this year, we plan to train another 200 plus schools to ensure that there's this universal buying of correct behaviors, etc., and that this is universally acceptable. So we have different approaches that we can use for our students or children with neurodiversity or who have these conditions. Strategy 4, we have to differentiate our learning experience. So we look at how these individuals learn. So the assessment is critical, because it also will tell, what do I need to do as an educator to meet the needs or the learning needs of these individuals with whom I'm interacting? And so we have to look at different ways in which we can engage. In terms of the assessment of these individuals, it doesn't have to be paper-based. If an individual can present using a PowerPoint, or they can do a digital presentation of something they're doing, we have to accommodate, because our brains process things differently. Good. The next strategy, there's 3 more to go, sensory regulation. So we have to understand what triggers our students, especially those who say maybe are on the autism spectrum. Some people, they don't like the noise, it triggers them, they may have a meltdown. So we have to look at creative ways, maybe a noise canceling earphone, or putting them in a quiet space or room to do something. And Ms. Park spoke to it in terms of the structural facilities. What do we have in our school system? And a lot of work needs to be done. And this goes beyond just pointing fingers at the education system. Everybody has to be involved in that process, in equipping the schools and so on. Yes, the government policies need to speak to that, and we agree, but we can advocate at different levels for different things. So definitely improving the systems within the school. Restorative practices, we have to help our students or children understand accountability, irrespective of whatever situation or condition it is that they are experiencing. And of course, we do teach social emotional learning within our school system. Our guidance counselors are so trained. And if everybody who is in this system, we have 1,047 guidance counselors nationally. And we are at this point in the guidance and counseling unit doing our training audit. Who needs to get training in what? And our senior education officers out there in the 7 regions are looking at what their guidance counselors' needs are. Right? We can't do everything overnight and at once, but we certainly recognize the need to provide the support. So these strategies are really supposed to be helping us within the school system, helping us as educators to basically recognize and accept that we will have these challenges to deal with as it regards to neurodiverse individuals. But there's nothing that says they can't be their best selves. There's nothing that says we can't have the systems in place to ensure or to facilitate them achieving their best possible life outcome. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for the time. And in concluding, understanding neurodiversity and effectively addressing challenging behaviors are crucial for creating an inclusive educational environment. And we do know that we have to build our capacity within the education system to facilitate same. Thank you and have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you so much very much, Ms. Smith-Parkin, for that concise presentation. I'm sure that quite a number of our audience might have picked up on things that they did not know before. I love how you were able to really hone in the different strategies that might be employed in our classroom. And I want to say, well done to the Ministry of Education. It seems that we have come a far, far way. And there are lots of questions that we want to ask. So please stay with us so that we can, come back to you and get some more of that information that you have shared. We want to invite Mrs. Jennifer Jarrett, Guidance Counselor at the Calabar High School, to now share with us some strategies that are employed to accommodate neurodivergence within the classroom space. Mrs. Jarrett?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It's really a pleasure to be here. And when I listened, we are all on the same page, and that's wonderful. Neurodiversity is here to stay, and we need to get our act together. Who is a neurodivergent student? A neurodivergent student is someone whose brain functions differently from what is typically expected. They may experience unique ways of thinking, learning, and processing information. This includes, but not limited to, conditions such as autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, dyslexia, and dyscalculia. Accommodating the neurodivergent child. One, we have to implement strategies that foster an inclusive, supportive, and accommodating environment. Individualized educational plans. We have to have a structured and predictable environment. We have to have visual support and flexible teaching methods. We have to also understand that neurodivergent students are not idiots. They are not ones who you put aside. They are just different in their brain functioning and learning. And therefore, we must put it together to help them during this process. The support needed. We need a positive behavior support. We need clear and consistent communication. We need a collaborative approach. We need professional development training for all stakeholders. Where I sit at Calabar High School, and I'm going to be, direct, we have neurodivergent students. What do we do? For example, when we do not label our students, we don't do that. But when we find out that students may have little challenges and difficulties, and they may refer to the guidance department, what we do is to incorporate parents in this. So first of all, when I heard about assessment, that's something that we must incorporate in our daily lives, where it consists of our neurodivergent students. So we'll say to parents, we'll ask them to come in, we'll sit them down, we'll, talk to them, feel out what's happening, do our little research, and then we'll say to parents, listen, we will have to assess. What we realize is that assessment sometimes can be very costly. So what we do, we encourage them to use the government support systems and so on. So in collaboration also, our parents, we also offer sometimes, not just sit down, but also training to help our parents to see that, listen, nothing is wrong with your child, it's just that maybe a little different, but how do we approach it? So the support needed, we have to be very clear. We have to be consistent in the communication and very collaborative in our approach as well. Also, When we find our neurodivergent students, especially when it has to do with examinations, what we do, we pull as many of them as we can, and we have them in a classroom setting that is very conducive to them. When we are dealing with examination, be it internal or external, where we have to go to CSEC with the assessment and ask them either for extra time for students and also for a reader writer, because sometimes depends on what is happening to the student, they need all that support. We will get the support from CSEC as well, but within the internal assisting the students, we also offer the reader-writer approach, the extra time. Sometimes we find out that in the guidance department, we have to give the students a 15 minutes break, wherein we even walk with the student for 15 minutes and come back. So what we do, we have to try our very best to meet the students where they are, and absolutely meet the students where they are, and absolutely make sure that every single thing we do is for the greater good of our student. Also, we realize that our neurodivergent students are absolutely increasing. So from the guidance unit, what we do again, we ensure we help teachers how to, approach the setting, because as you may be aware of this, that sometimes teachers may say to the students, you are behaving this way because of, and sometimes we have to draw them in and to say, listen to me, let us sit down at the table together. Sometimes what we do, we have family coming in together to meet with every single teacher of the student, especially when the report comes to us that, listen, this student is somebody that we cannot manage at all. And then when we realize and the assessment is done, then we understand more of the students. So we help in this approach as well. In summary, it is important to recognize that neurodivergence is a natural variation of human cognition and does not inherently imply deficits or problems. It's not a problem that the child has, but we have to ensure that all stakeholders are educated and willing to work with that child. It highlights diverse ways of experiencing and interacting with the world, understanding their unique needs, and provide accommodations that help them succeed academically and socially. At the guidance unit, we have realized that when working with these students can produce just the same as quote unquote normal, how normal students learn, but sometimes they even come out even better with a educational or examination results. What happens is how we deal with these students. Neurodivergent students supposed to be treated with love, care. They are some of the most loving and caring students that we have. We at the guidance unit also say to the students, whatever it is, just come. So we provide that sort of, encouragement to them. We always make sure that our neurodivergent students are treated with the highest regard that they are allowed to be treated with. So thank you very much for listening. And it was such a pleasure to be with you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mrs. Jarrett. You said something very interesting that, neurodivergence in our school population or in our child and adolescent population is on the rise. And that might be quite accurate. I don't know if it's on the rise in terms of new cases, but it might be that we have become more aware, more knowledgeable. And instead of labeling our children as lazy or rude or disrespectful, we now recognize that there might be inherent challenges to how they engage and interact with their external environment that needs more for support and less of for punishment. Wonderful. We really, really, really appreciate your contributions this evening. We have a lovely lady here with us, and I would like to say a bold lady, because it's not so often that individuals share their stories, and especially stories that might be a little different for some of us. We want to welcome the lovely Mrs. Shafe Hutchinson, who is a parent of a child living with neurodivergence. Mrs. Hutchinson, we want to open the floor to you and extend your 7 minutes to tell us what your lived experience has been like. What has the journey been like and where you are right now? Welcome.
Thank you so much, Georgia. I'm so privileged to be a part of this, this webinar. And I'm so excited about everybody's presentation and where Jamaica is moving towards. I have a son, he's now 7. He's diagnosed with autism and ADHD. So the autism affects his speech, so he's 7. So he still has 3-letter words, 3-letter sentences. He's not yet fluent in his conversations, but he still communicates. We are coming from him pulling us to whatever he wants and pointing to at least asking, I want juice, I want snacks. So we're so excited. The ADHD now affects his hyperactivity. He's so busy. He's always over the place. And because of that, when he was 3 years old, we decided to start sending him to school. And within 6 months, our experience was just eye-opening. My son, my beloved son, changed about 6 schools. He spent 1 day at one school. He spent 2 days at one school. He spent 1 week at one school. He spent a month at one school until we had to pull him from school. Somebody cared for him for about 3 months, and we decided to try again. It has been a journey. And so with the education system, now he goes to a primary school, and we're trying to. So now he goes to a primary school, and we try to get him into a special school. However, what we find is that the school, there's no space. The long waiting list, it is just ridiculous. Where he goes to school now, well, I won't beat up the ministry because I have the privilege of getting a shadow. The challenge I have is that the shadow is not trained. She doesn't get much support. And because of that, she doesn't know what to do. I can't help her. So sometimes it gets frustrating. My son, he needs speech therapy. When I checked out a company, it is 16,500 per session, and that's like 1 hour and 45 minutes. I'm not saying that it is expensive, but it is just, sometimes it is too much for us. Something like right now, my challenge is that we need a new assessment. And when I reach out to Samshot Diagnostic Center, they are saying that they have appointments from 2024. And we rely on them. Well, I'm hoping to get some assistance from the ministry to get another shadow. And the ministry is saying that they need a new assessment. And at the same time, when I think of getting it privately, we're talking about $60,000 to get it privately. It's a lot. And with the direction, with what is happening right now in the schools, it's as if when you call schools, they're saying we are not trained. We don't know how to assist. It is a lot. It was recently, my son started this school in September, and it was since March. I have a young lady that assists me with behavioral therapy, and we had a little workshop with the shadow, with the guidance counselor, with the teacher, with the principal, just to advocate for my son, because I want him to be happy at school. It is very difficult. For me personally, where am I right now? I think I'm about heading to a breakdown, to be very honest. And I need to check my mental health right now, because I've been pouring out and trying to figure things out. And sometimes at this point, I feel like I'm broken. Honestly, I don't know if I'm going now or if I'm coming. I'm just tired. Sometimes our teachers don't know how to empathize with the situation. It's as if they don't understand what is happening. it is real. The struggle is real. The struggle is real. And I don't want to overspend my time. I want to tell you thanks for listening and have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hutchinson. And I know that wasn't necessarily the easiest, you know, story to share with us. We can only begin to imagine the difficulties and the challenges having a child that, does not fit into the standard bounds of our education and social landscape. When you think about when our schools were created many years ago, the knowledge that we now have did not exist. And you made an excellent point where there are changes, and you talk about the assessment unit having a backlog of clients waiting. And I want to say this to you, having been privileged to have traveled and gone to seminars and workshops in other countries, it is not a situation that is unique to Jamaica. In fact, in Jamaica, we are doing much better than a lot of our first world partners. You'd be amazed that there are families in the wonderful North America who wait for a whole year just to get an approval to be considered for an assessment and then wait another longer period. That doesn't make it okay, because ideally we would want to get to a place where the assessment of our children is a standard practice, and parents don't have to wait so long. I think we are now getting into a space where we recognize the value of this. Mrs. Hutchinson, years ago, we didn't know about assessments. We didn't do any testing. We just labeled our children, you either fit in or fell out. Fit in and we take you into school, fall out, and we don't have any space for you. And now I think there's a breakthrough when we get our principals and our teachers saying, we don't know what to do. We need an assessment to advise us. And it's a baby step, but it's a step nonetheless. And I want to just thank you for your boldness and your bravery and your honesty. You're not prettying it up. You are saying how difficult it is. And I am hopeful that at some point we can really step in and offer you more support and hold your hand a little bit more and help to stand in the gap with you and your family in this difficult, this difficult walk. And not difficult because of your son, because I hear all the love. You're a beautiful boy. I hear all the love, but difficult because all the support that you need is not readily accessible. And you speak on behalf of so many of our population, because not everyone has the financial capacity to pay for it. And to our wider public, we know it comes at a cost. We always want to remember that it comes at a cost. And these centers like Macam and Michael and Sam Sharp that do exist, those fees are paid by the government, and hence why we have that backlog, but there are many other spaces that provide the services at a cost, but not everyone is able to afford that. Thank you so much, Mrs. Hutchinson. We have this lovely gentleman with us, and I'm so excited to hear what he will be sharing with us. He will be the last of our presenter before we get into an open forum of conversation, and that is Mr. Justin Francis. Justin, are you ready for us, sir? All right, Justin, you're very low.
You hear me now? Hold on, you hear me now?
Much better. Yes, sir. Welcome. Please go ahead. And Justin will be speaking about the challenges that, our adolescents or children face within our space. And Justin, just to remind you, we have 7 minutes. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, you see my screen?
Okay. We are seeing your screen.
Okay, thank you. So good night again, everybody. So tonight, my topic will be on challenges faced by students in the school affecting the rights of the child's education. Right? This is just a brief introduction. So I'm just gonna jump straight into it. So many students in this day and age come from low income families who cannot afford lunch, textbooks, uniform, or even transportation, because it is, not everybody is as financially stable as some of us are, or as privileged as we are. And some children are also forced to stay home or even drop out of their family's income. And this is a little quote that I added. No child should be denied education because of financial barriers. And I had a little law reference, which is under the Education Act 1965, all children in Jamaica must attend school between ages 6 and 16, but implementation is weak when families are poor. So this is just a little thing I added from the UNCRC. While education is a fundamental right of every child, as outlined by UNCRC or United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 28, many students still face serious challenges in school that violate this right and hinder their educational development. And I added this quote by Nelson Mandela: education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. While hindering a child from getting education, you're hindering their ability to move further or helping them understand how our society works, right? So I went to these already. This one right here: schools in poorer communities are underfunded and overcrowded. Impact on rights: it violates the child's right to equal education and opportunities, and it creates a cycle of poverty and limited social mobility. So this one right here where it says students dealing with trauma, depression, or anxiety often struggle to focus or perform, right? Lack of support systems in school can worsen the issue. Because if a child with depression or anxiety is going to school without the proper let's say the proper management or someone to help guide them through this, it is going to the anxiety will lead to depression, as someone stated earlier, which will lead to other things, and it can lead the child to be on a suicide watch because after a certain time, after a certain period of time, they're going to be feel neglected. So let's jump into the impacts and rights, which is number one: neglect a child's right to holistic development and protection, contributes to the school absenteeism and dropout. One, bullying, gang-related violence, and even corporal punishment, despite policy changes, create fearful and unsafe learning environments. Some students miss school regularly out of fear or trauma. Teachers are also affected, leading to burnout and absenteeism, which impacts students' learning. Law reference: the Child Care and Protection Act 2004 promotes a child's right to protect from abuse, a protection from abuse. However, it is not always effectively enforced in schools. Okay, slide. This one right here. So I think this is my last slide. So this is a thing that I added, which is Jamaica is bound by international laws like the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, UNCRC, and regional commitments like Vision 2030, right? So those of you who don't really know, UNCRC really provides the legal international framework for child's right to education. And Vision 2030 is Jamaica's national commitment to turn those rights into real outcomes by improving access, quality, and equity in education. And in conclusion, while Jamaican laws protect a child's right to education, poverty, violence, and poor infrastructure still block that path. As students, teachers, and citizens, we must advocate for stronger enforcement, more investment, and inclusive school environments to ensure every child in Jamaica receives the education they deserve. For listening to this presentation that I created, I hand over back to Miss Rose.
Thank you so much for that, Justin. Wonderful. I really appreciate. Well done, well done. Ladies and gentlemen, you have fulfilled the task that was bestowed upon you. And may I say, I am blown away at the attention to detail and how you have all done such a fabulous job in just pulling all the key points together. And when there is good work, you get more work. And we have lots of questions within our chat room. So I will be fielding the questions to you. And in some instances, they will be very specific, and in others, I will open them up. One of the first questions that I see being fielded to us is, I'm going to invite the lovely Mrs. Parks or Mrs. Parkin to respond. And the question is, are you aware of any policy that is in place to increase the physical accommodation for neurodivergent children? And I know Ms. Parks had spoken to the fact that there is at least one special education facility in each parish. But if we are to follow along the conversation of Ms. Jarrett, we are seeing an increase in children with exceptionalities, and it goes without saying that one school that houses less than 200 children cannot be enough. Are we aware of any policies in place to increase the number of schools that provide support for children living with exceptionalities, or to provide support for such children in typical mainstream schools?
What we have is what we're working with currently. Unfortunately, there are always talks about expansion, but what we have is what we're working with, and perhaps and more traditional schools are taking on children with what we call it, neurodivergence. See?
You can say exceptionalities. Yes.
Exceptionalities, right? So what we have found is that we look on things on a case by case basis. So you will have some primary schools, as was presented earlier, and you'll have some prep schools, and you'll have some high schools where they do have their shadows at schools, and it's a traditional school and everybody goes there. And so there is a sensitization, and there's an increase in sensitization. One of my recommendations is that I don't see how we're going to have enough specialized schools to respond to the need that is rising. And it could be that this need had always existed, and it's just now that we're really zoning in and giving it the required attention. And so what we have to do now is arm more teachers, arm more regular schools to deal with these children so that they can get the best care necessary.
And I support that on one end, Mrs. Parks, because I work in the child and adolescent mental health space, and definitely believe that there is value to increasing awareness and sensitizing our general population, so our children, our teachers, or other parents recognize that we have to hold space for everyone in our society. But I also think that there are exceptions to that, where there are some children where being in a typical environment is not in their best interest. And to just remind that, if you put a child, my mother used to talk about, putting you in a lake versus a small pond. When you put children in spaces where they are not able to excel because it is way beyond their capacity, sometimes you break their spirits. So being in a typical functioning space where everybody's moving on and they're doing 6Cs and they're doing PEP and they're doing CAPE, and the capacity of my brain doesn't take me there, it might make me feel less than, versus in a space with like-minded pairs whose brains might think a little bit like mine, and there are other ways that I can find worth. So while I commend our systems for, answering to the call, I think we have to get to a place where we realize that in the same way we build new high schools and new primary schools for our typical children, we also have to build a few more for our atypical, neurodivergent, exceptional families. I don't know if Ms. Smith Parkin has anything different to add to that.
Fully agree with your perspective. Yes.
Yes, and if you heard
All
Mrs.
right.
Go, Mrs. Smith Parkin.
Okay. Thank you for that. I know that within the Ministry of Education, we are trying to expand our shadow program, definitely. But in terms of physical infrastructures, there are no new schools that are being built. I think in 2019, Chatola Melnathan was equipped with a special education unit. So definitely the policies that exist in the ministry are really looking at improving the access and the facilities that students with special needs can access. There is a full special education unit. They have a mandate, and they are working assiduously with the CEO, with the schools, just to ensure that my apologies, I did not turn my video on, but definitely through the special education unit, there is work being done. We are supported a lot by UNICEF as well. and there is that special interest in our special needs population within the school system. Many schools, based on the Disabilities Act, have now started to ramp up their efforts in ensuring that access, especially for those with physical challenges, can get into the schools and to be comfortable. In terms of those who have cognitive and intellectual challenges and disabilities, we're still including those students within the school system. We're not turning any child away. I know many parents are suffering, and I heard
Mrs.
Miss Hutchins, yes, I really empathize with her. And we do have counseling services for the parents who are finding it difficult and hard to manage. We have the National Parent Support Commission there as well. And we know it's not easy. We know it's not challenging. We know it's challenging, rather, treating with and dealing with the needs of a child who has these special needs on a daily basis. And I hear her in terms of, just at her wit's end, but we are working assiduously at the ministry to improve our offerings and our ability to treat with the needs of the special needs children and their families as well. So it's not only about the children, but we're offering the support to the parents as well.
Yes, and Mrs. Smith-Perkins, I know that you and your team are working assiduously to really meet those needs, and we know we won't get everyone. Let's put that disclaimer out there, but it's not for a lack of intent or will or hope. But another question that we wanted to ask is, and I think Mrs. Park alluded to it, why do we have children who are getting to the grade 9 and 10 level who are not literate, but are in these places? It seems to be almost, like an oxymoron. It doesn't make a lot of sense, because if you can't read and write, then are we just passing our children through the academic system, almost like a babysitting, to say, well, every child has a right to be in school? But can you imagine going through so many years of school, and at the end of the day, you're not able to, you don't have basic literacy? What is our position? And I've heard parents say that we exist in a system where it is age-based. You must be in the grade because you're at the age, versus capacity and aptitude-based. So are we doing a disservice to our children? What is the ministry's position on that? Why are we having
there is change that is on the horizon, and that's currently where we are. We are not passing our children, or we don't want the society to think we're passing our children through on a conveyor belt. And we have recognized the challenges that our children are facing, especially where literacy is concerned. We have a new curriculum roadmap. And one of the things is that we are looking at not advancing the children based on age, but on their ability to basically master literacy and fulfill those goals before they transition to the next grade level. My video, I don't know why the video is closing off. It's not me. Right? I don't know if the video doesn't like my face. Right. But we definitely are looking at those strategies to address that particular issue. And our literacy specialists are being trained. They are working assiduously in the regions to improve those outcomes, especially for children who are not reading very well. We have partnerships and also with other ministries, agencies, and departments to improve the literacy and numeracy abilities of our children. But specifically from our executive management perspective, there is an approach that we're looking at now that for the next school year coming, we'll be making some changes. We've been sensitizing our principals, we've been sensitizing our colleagues who are supervising the school system, what education should really look like in our transforming education for national development approach. I don't know if everybody knows about trend, but we're out there trending based on the Patterson report. There are a lot of things that were recommended in terms of what we should be doing to improve the education system, and we certainly are working at it. Not everything gets to the media, not everything is out there in the news, but certainly the strategy is being worked on currently as we speak to ensure that we can address especially the literacy issues and challenges within the school system.
Wonderful, Mrs. Smith Parkinson. I want to say that wholeheartedly we support you because we want to know that as a society, we are caring for our most vulnerable, our children, our adolescents, and our families who might be living with exceptionalities. One of our audience members is asking if there are facilities that provide families and children with behavioral issues with free, she says, free facilities. Yes, Juanita. We do have those facilities. Across the island, we have child and adolescent clinics or child and adolescent wellness centers that are staffed and equipped with psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, mental health nurse practitioners and officers, and psychiatric nursing aides who provide psychosocial support to members of the population free of cost. This service falls under the umbrella of the Ministry of Health and Wellness. So those services do exist. I can speak to the Western region where we have child guidance clinics in all our parishes. So in Sablamar, in Westmoreland, in Trelawney, in Hanover, and in St. James. So those services do exist. So feel free to visit any of your health centers. Most primary care physicians are able to also direct you to where you can access these services.
And may I just say, Georgia, that in the Ministry of Education and Youth, we have our integrated services delivery system where students and their families, their parents, they can get access to psychosocial support services, counseling in particular. We have a system through which the guidance counselor will refer the students who are in need of it, and the psychologist or psychiatrist to whom they refer, the ministry pays or takes care of that bill. So it's not a cost to the parent or the student. So the guidance counselors within the school system will make those referrals. The ministry personnel will ensure that the needs of those individuals are met. So if you're having a challenge, do not hesitate to speak with your guidance counselor at the school. And if it is that you feel you're not getting any redress there as a parent, speak to the ministry office within your region. We have 7. So I think I can tell you them in Region 1. Our regional office is at Hero Circle. In Region 2, the office is at, I think, Pasley Gardens. In Region 3, it's in Brownstown. Region 4 is at Alice Eldenmeyer Drive. Just any regional office. In Region 5, that's Mandeville. You'll find the office. I don't remember the name of the street. Region 6, that's in Old Harbor. Region 7, they're at the hotel in Clarendon at
Hotel Versailles. Oh, she fell off. She will be back shortly. But when Miss Smith Parkinson comes back on, she can continue. Miss Parker, are you able to tell us?
I don't know what she was going to say, but I'm going to say we do have a service at the Office of the Children's Advocate. It's called Safe Spots. And so it allows children to call in. And when they call in or they WhatsApp in or they have various contacts. I have the contact information here, IG, Snapchat, sorry. You can get, I'm not with it. But Safe Spot is. And so they get access to trained psychologists and the children get an opportunity to speak to someone without any interference, and it's 24/7. So they can call in the middle of the night, someone will answer the phone.
And it is free of cost. So yes, the
guy free of cost.
Aware of this information, yes.
Safe Spot Jamaica. And you can find it online, and we have it's 888 Safe Spots.
Yes, very good. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Mrs. There's a question for you. Someone from our audience wanted to know that given your experience as a parent, as a mother of a child who has exceptionalities, if there were 3 things that you could do if you had that authority, that power in terms of from a policy standpoint, what are those 3 specific things you would do, Mrs. Hutchinson? You still with us?
Still with you. I didn't get the question. Could you please repeat?
If you could make 3 changes to our system, maybe our education system, to support families like yourself, what would those changes be? If you could give us 3.
Yes, first, I would provide funding, some assistance for children, probably something like the park, provide some assistance. Another thing is that there must be in every school, because we understand that it may not be, it may be challenging to build the schools right now, but I think that they can put things in place at the schools now, a resource area, and where they can provide proper training for those persons, just for the inclusion aspect of it. So that's 2. And then the third one is that parents must be a part of the training as well. They must provide help for the household to learn how to cope and to build that village. I think those are the 3 critical changes that I would, if I had the power to, I would have really put in place.
And I think those are 3 excellent recommendations I want to share with you in the event that you may not know. Through the Ministry of Labor, there is an arm called the Jamaica Council for Persons Living with Disabilities, and they actually provide a lot of support for families of children living with exceptionalities. If you visit the Ministry of Labor within your parish, there is a form that you can take to have your child's primary care physician or any clinician who has been engaging and interacting with your child fill out on your behalf. You return this form to the office and they will walk you through the process. And they provide an array of support that is really tailored and suited to you in an individual manner. They also are linked to rural services for children living with disabilities, who would go around and provide personalized in-person support for families living with disabilities. And I'm so glad that you're here with us, because we get to touch base with you and share some of these supportive offerings that do exist within our space that might provide a little bit more on this journey that you're on. And we hope if there are any other families that are out there that are listening, they are also capturing this information to
But
take it and use it. Okay, Ms. Hood?
Could I have one? I am
Sure.
also registered with the Disability Council, and my experience so far, it's hard sometimes to get through to someone. I'm not sure if it is that it is overwhelming on their part, because with the need that has been on the increase, I understand, but it's hard to get through to someone. And in terms of, I remember I applied for the grant for the back to school. So I applied for it within the period, which is May, and I never got the book vouchers until almost the following year. And I'm like, it wouldn't make sense. And I was thinking too that, I mean, I'm working full time and they offer the grant, and I wouldn't really qualify for the grant because of the stipulations there as well. So I think they need to go back to the drawing board with some of those policies, and it's not easy. It's on paper, but it's not practical.
Mrs. Hutchinson, you said something that I love so much, and we hear that quite often, that sometimes, there are different levels of need in our society. And sometimes we might say we're catering to the poor, let me use that term, but we also have working class families like yourselves that may not be classified as poor based on the metrics that are used, but you still need support. Because having a child with exceptionality comes with a lot of financial responsibilities that sometimes our salaries are not able to extend to.
Thank you.
Yes, so yes. And it sounds to me like we have social workers in the Ministry of Health and Wellness. And I know that, by the time we end this evening, we should be able to connect you with one of our social workers. And one of the things that our social workers do really beautifully is to bridge those gaps. So when you speak about trying to access the Ministry of Labor and not getting through in a timely manner, or getting a response at all, our social workers are able to do that legwork for you and to follow up on your behalf. Because as you rightfully said, sometimes, it's one person trying to respond to 500 people.
And I like that you preface what you were saying with that. You know, I always remind individuals, if 100 people turn up in a space for an emergency, 99 have to wait. Everyone can't be seen at the same time. So there is always a wait. It doesn't make the people who are providing the service, you know, less engaged and less willing and less caring. You know, when we're in a crisis, we all want to be heard immediately. But unfortunately, if 100 people are in a crisis, 90 have to wait. Who makes the choice of difference? I don't know. Sharon Bennett says, and this is a question for maybe Miss Park or Miss Smith Parkin, or even Miss Jarrett. It says, how do teachers deal with special needs children when that was not a part of their training? And I know that's an excellent question, Miss Bennett, because, you know, if we integrate children with exceptional needs in our typical classrooms, what is the support that is given, you know, to the teachers? Anyone wants to take that one?
I don't see Miss Parkin show up, so I'll show up. I think Miss Parkin is best placed to answer the question, but I think what we have are teachers who are learning on the job. That's what we have. We have teachers.
Yes. Constant capacity building, Ms. Park, and to the person who asked the question. Classroom management was taught for any teacher in training. Classroom management is a major part of what they're taught, and some of that has to also look at dealing with children with special needs or special challenges. But part of the ministry's mandate is to continuously do professional development with our educators. The regions are working with the schools. They put on seminars, they go into the school system, the schools themselves, they engage with the educators. But the ministry is on that path. We are constantly doing capacity building. We recognize what the challenges are, and mind you, everything can't be done overnight. And we encourage our educators to really explore, educate yourselves as well. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's not just sitting and waiting on the ministry to do something, but you also have a professional responsibility to self. We know the support sometimes is not readily available, but from the ministry's perspective, we are trying. Our guidance counselors, we just completed a lot of training activities and exercises with our guidance counselors and teachers in schools, especially that are part of zones of special operations. And we recognize that some of the children from these areas, they have several challenges, and we're trying to always equip our educators with the skills, with the tools, with the abilities to treat with the situations that they're faced with within the classroom. Being open-minded too is critical. Receiving the education as to how to deal with these children and to deal with individuals and their parents who are faced with these challenges is critical. Someone said sometimes, I think Ms. Hutchinson said, sometimes the educators are not empathetic, and we've seen that. And sometimes the school administrators too are challenged because they really don't know what to do and how to do it. We recognize that, and we are putting the systems in place from the ministry to ensure that our educators can function and deal with the situations. There are a lot of issues, there are a lot of challenges. We are not denying that, but there's no one size fit all fix to the problems, and it has to be a collaborative approach. Everybody has to be all hands on deck, because we recognize that some of the issues that teachers are facing in the classroom, they're pretty new too, you know, and we welcome suggestions and recommendations in terms of what can work as well. But we have the experts, we are aware of what the challenges are. We're always looking at beefing up the resources to ensure that our educators can function within the learning environment, especially when they have to treat with a child who is neurodivergent or has other challenges.
Wonderful response. Ms. Parker, this question was asked of you earlier on and I slipped over it. Is there a step-by-step process that parents and guardians can move through in trying to get their child in school? So if their child is not in school or their child has been put out of school, and sometimes getting out of school, it's really hard to get back into school. Is there a step-by-step process? Is someone that they can call? Is there an action that they can take? Because so often we hear, we're waiting. How do we educate our parents on this matter?
Well, we assist at the Office of the Children's Advocate. So if there's a child that has been placed out of school, we liaise with the Ministry of Education in assessing what the issue might have been, see if they were put out of school in accordance with the Education Act, because it's possible that the child was put out of school improperly, and so we would contest it in a case like that. We also make representation for the children at school boards, and we do that we do that on a regular basis. And then
Back to Mrs. Parker.
the Office of the Children's Advocate,
Yeah.
yes, they contact the Office of the Children's Advocate. They make up a report that the child is out of school, or they can contact the Office of the Children's Registry, which would not only filter that report to our office and to my desk, but it would also filter it to other agencies such as maybe the CPFSA. So for instance, if it is a child that has certain special needs, for instance, then we will have all the stakeholders get involved. So yes, we're going to attack trying to get the child into a school, a proper placement. Ministry of Education is usually very responsive to us. And then at the same time, CPFSA can also offer other skills. It might mean counseling at home. So there are a number of stakeholders that are really assisting to ensure that the best interest of our children is
Our audience is asking for a number, Mrs. Parker.
for our office. Okay. All right, let me just, I don't know it by heart. That's awful.
While you're looking for that number, just to respond to the question, what are the strategies used to identify children at risk? There are, Mrs. Smith-Parkin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, there are standardized screenings that you do of children if they're concerned. Am I correct, Mrs. Smith-Parkin?
That is correct. Is my video off again, right? Within the school system, we encourage the guidance counselors to look out for these challenges and issues, and to refer the children for the assessment if they themselves are not trained or are not able to do the assessment. So we do that. And once we we also have a partnership with the Ministry of National Security, where their case workers also, once there's an issue with a student at an institution, they can also be referred through the guidance counselor for a risk assessment to be done as well. And this is the risk assessment instrument that the PRG and other ministries, departments, and agencies have been exposed to and are using. So once we identify the risk levels, we provide the interventions with the students.
Very good. Ms. Parker, you have that?
Yes, I do. So our website is www.welcome.oca.gov.jm. And our numbers are 948-1293. So that's 948-1293. And also 948-1469. And we have a website. Sorry, I gave you the wrong website. The website is www.oca.gov.jm. And we're located at the Air Jamaica building. It's the 11th floor. And for those people who don't know where Air Jamaica building is or used to be, it's 72 Harbor Street. So you can get in. It's downtown.
Oh, yes. But the rest of us that don't live in Kingston, the Kingston people forget us.
But definitely www.oca.gov.jm, and it will give you the contact information.
Wonderful, wonderful. Mr. Francis, I have a question here for you. Do you believe, as a youth leader and as a young man, very much on
Hold
the
on,
pulse,
excuse me.
that
Can you please repeat the question?
do you believe that the adults in your spaces understand the challenges that are affecting our youths?
I do believe some of the adults understand the challenges that we face as adolescents or teenagers growing up, but not a lot of them are also being exposed or know how to handle this type of situation. Because when you grow up a particular way, it's gonna be embedded in your mind that you should grow the child that particular way as well. While they are going through things that yeah, they're going through teenager stuff. When you're gonna being a teenager, you're gonna have mood swings and different a rush of emotions, and you not knowing how to controlling that. Having a good role model there, or adults in the community or in the society that understand your struggles would be easier for you. But there are adults there, but it is in let's say it is scarce.
Thank you so much for that. I think that's a very good response. So I just want to restate what he has said. The adults understand, but what they may struggle with is how to connect that understanding. So how to provide the support for our children and adolescents as they face their difficulties. Mrs. Jarrett, if we could borrow you for a moment, are you still with us?
Sure, I am.
As an esteemed counselor, working with boys, such a privileged job, if there was one thing that you could give as a gem to parents and caregivers, what is the one advice that you'd like to impart?
Thank you much for that question. One of the things that I would say, listen to your children. Not just what they say, but their behavior and their action. To be honest with you, our culture sometimes may think that boys don't have emotions and they don't show it. Well, let me tell you, it's a different story. They do. But if you listen to them, communicate with them, it's different. And to be honest with you, they will give you the feedback that you may never ever know that they have. So just listen to them, communicate with them, and it will happen.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate you giving that memory gem. As we wrap up what has been an amazing evening, I would like to just share with you some simple strategies as we move towards a conclusion of the evening. We would have started out by reminding our audience as to what neurodivergence speak to. And I'm going to restate that it is a difference in how the brain processes information, how the brain interacts and engages with its environment. And for those of us that have been privileged to engage and interact with children and adolescents who do have exceptionalities, we might have a greater appreciation of what this definition speaks to. But I do want to remind our parents and our caregivers and our stakeholders of some simple strategies that you can employ in providing support and strengthening the functionality of children and adolescents living with neurodivergence. We want to remind our parents to avoid exposure to screen time for children under the age of 5 years old. Children should not be exposed to any type of social media and screens. These are our tablets and our cell phones and some of the activities that are marketed towards infants and young children before they have mastered their communication capacities, their ability to have a conversation, express their desires and their needs, and they are able to read and write. So we want you to publicize that as much as you possibly can. Avoid the screen time exposure. As our children get older, we want to encourage that we manage and monitor screen time engagement. Once again, there are studies that are demonstrating that excessive and intense exposure to screen time changes and reconfigures the brain architecture and hardware. And this might present itself in challenges with self-regulation, challenges maintaining and sustaining attention, and challenges with motivation, almost like a drug. We want to remind our parents and caregivers to provide safe, stable,
and secure spaces for our children and adolescents. A home that is punctuated by love and acceptance and support is a healthy home and a happy home. While our children need discipline and guidance, discipline does not mean punishment, and it is not always harsh and unwielding. It also has grace and forgiveness as a part of it. We want to also encourage our parents and caregivers to encourage our children to be physically active. A physically active body does so much wonders for the brain and helps our children in their growth and stable development. Encourage our children to formulate healthy pair relationships. Yes, our children need friends. Many of us would have been raised in spaces where we were told not to have friends. I want to dispel that approach and that perspective as much as possible, and to let our parents know that good friendships are also integral to stable and healthy development. And there's lots of evidence and research to support that approach. Get to know the children that your children play with and speak with and spend time with. Ask questions and encourage good, healthy conversations. It makes a difference when we trot along in life with company. I don't know, I want to allow each of our guests to say one last thing, to just sum up everything in one sentence or two before we wrap up. And I'm going to go in the opposite direction. So I'm going to start with Mr. Francis. One sentence to sum up before we end for the evening. Justin?
All right, so hold on, let me get my camera ready. One sentence to sum up this evening is an informative let's see, an informative meeting of different people working in different spaces, students, guidance counselors, members of and a parent expressing their concerns. So an overall sentence that I would put is that a meeting informing you on different strategies and ways to deal with students with neurocognitive issues, or those that are on the spectrum.
And if you could give us one advice as we seek to support adolescents, Justin, is there one thing you would want to say to us as the adults and the parents?
One advice, try to get to know, like, as you said earlier, try to know your child more. And that, you might think you know them, but you actually don't. So try to get to know your child more. Talk to them, have deep conversations, but also at the same time, do not be too pushy or overbearing while doing so.
Thank you for that, Mr. Justin. Very good, very good. Mrs. Jarrett.
Sure. I would say embrace neurodiversity. Treat these children with the utmost respect. Always try to make sure that you reach them where they are and add value to their lives. They are great children. So I would say one thing that I will be leaving here with is that neurodiversity is here. We need to embrace it and be willing to share with our children. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Mrs. Hutchinson, one thing you'd like to leave with us?
Our children, they are the future, and that's the reality. So we need to make space to make the future brighter.
Wonderful. I love that very much. Yes. Mrs. Parkins.
No thoughts? My internet has decided to act up. Hearing me?
We're hearing you clear. Yes.
Okay. But I just want to say that it's all hands on deck as we try to make a successful, comfortable future for our children. They deserve to be loved. They deserve to be given every opportunity to excel. We have a lot of work to do in terms of educating our population, in terms of how we respond to the needs of children who have exceptionalities. And this could be cognitive or any other thing. sometimes people still believe that people who have challenges, you know, they ought to be cast aside somewhere. But that thought process needs to be thrown out somewhere. And we do the best we can because we are equipped with the knowledge. We have the capacity, we have the capabilities to do the best we can for our children. I want to remind people, and I think Ms. Park may agree with this, to prevent or to deny our children their right to an education, you can find yourself in problems with the law. And it is something we're very serious about at the Ministry of Education. You can't just put a child out of school because you believe you can't deal with the challenges that a child presents. We can work together to find the resources and all the support that the children need. Speak to people, find out what can be done, what exists. Some people, some school facilities, some educators do not know of the support systems that are there. Speak to your regional officers. We can support, we are willing, and we are working assiduously through our international partners or local partners to provide the support the education system needs, especially to deal with our special needs population.
Thank you so very much for that, Ms. Parkin. And finally, Ms. Ken Park.
Okay. So I will end by saying we need to continue these discussions. It has to be ongoing, and we need to be open to learning and to growing as a people, as a society. Because the takeaway for me is not so much the children, because the children have always had these issues. From I was a child, I could go back to that. But what we need to do now is to educate our masses that we're sensitive and empathetic and responsive. And so that comes through education. So we have to be open to learning about our children so we can give them the best that they need.
And I salute that. That is such a lovely point to end on. Dr. Elizabeth Crossman, Dr. Leiber, I hope you were listening. It sounds to me like we're going to be having an in-person conference next year, right, Miss Parkin? We're going to be in person, and we're going to have Miss Hutchinson, Miss Jarrett, Mr. Francis. Everyone is going to be on a platform, on a stage, and we're going to talk way longer than 7 minutes and give, all this information out there and really stimulate these conversations so that we can inform and advise policy, and hopefully, open the door, to the unknown so that people have a greater appreciation that this is very much a part of our Jamaican landscape. We want to, on behalf of the Southeast Regional Health Authority, the University of the West Indies, Western Jamaica Campus, Department of Sociology, Psychology, and Social Work, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Child and Adolescent Mental Health Unit. I want to take this opportunity to extend our deepest appreciation to our esteemed guests who have made this such a wonderful conversation. I feel like we could have continued speaking if time were not upon us. I want to thank Mrs. Ken Parks, Mrs. Simone Smith Parkin, Mrs. Jennifer Jarrett, Mrs. Shafee Hutchinson, and Mr. Justin Francis for taking the time to be here with us and for sharing such amazing, open, frank, and honest insights. We also want to thank Dr. Judith Leiber, Nurse Janette Foster-Waite, and Dr. Elizabeth Crossman, who are a part of our team, having helped us and spearheaded this evening's proceedings. And of course, Mr. Andre Hewitt, our IT man behind the scenes, for doing such a wonderful setup. And most importantly, we thank our audience because our conversations need you to be the vehicle to move the discussion around the island and to make the changes happen that would have been recommended. Great news, today was just day one. Tomorrow, day two will be even better, I promise you. The conversation, the dialogue will continue. We welcome you to register, jump on. It is a free public lecture forum. Everyone can participate.
We look forward to seeing you, and we wish you a wonderful, wonderful evening. I thank you, everyone.